I want to talk about fear a little bit. Fear often holds us back from living our life to our full or almost full potential. But is fear really bad? No, it's not bad. And I'll give you an example of that. There is a book called The Gift of Fear, which I believe is the most important book for every teen and their parent to read. The book talks about the actual feeling of fear that we experience as humans when we're afraid for our lives. That's a really good fear, because that fear allows our body to release certain things like glucose and different other things that allow us to get away or fight or whatever. Fear is also what our brain picks up, which I really like. I really like this. This book really changed my mind about fear in general, right? And I've had a reason to read this book, and I've already talked about this, I think. But the idea is that feeling that fear is very important in understanding what kind of fear we're dealing with. When someone plans to do something bad, plans to commit a crime or whatever, it happens twice. Once in their mind and second time in reality. And so because it first happens in their mind, they can't control the fact that they're giving away signs of their plan. They behave in a certain way that gives away these signs, right? And so we often don't consciously pick up those signs. But our subconscious, our brain, is geared toward self-preservation. And because of that, our brain often picks up things and signs that we can't explain. And this book, The Gift of Fear, talks about not forcing ourselves to explain or understand it logically. We feel what we feel, and there's a reason for it, and we don't have to figure out that reason. The idea is to listen to that fear, right? That's in situations where that's absolutely necessary for survival. But there's a different kind of fear. You know, every mom, every woman who's been in a violent or abusive situation, every person who has ever been in a traumatic experience, who's ever had a traumatic experience, has a different brain, has different brain connections. It actually, trauma physically rewires our brain. And so this is something I learned from a psychologist. And the idea isn't to get rid of that fear. You know, we actually should trust it. But also keep in mind that just like it being normal to feel that victim mindset after a traumatic experience or some experience, right? That's difficult. Maybe it's change. Maybe it's, whatever. Just like it's normal to feel that way for a certain period of time. There's no set period of time, but certain period of time to allow your brain, your psyche to deal with that change or with whatever happened. And then at some point it becomes a trap. Similarly, fear, our brain, because it's geared towards self-preservation, fear also can drive us into a trap. A constant trap of not doing anything, of not getting out of our shell and doing anything. That's where it becomes a trap, and that's where it becomes negative. And that's what we have to deal with. So I want to offer you an analogy, a metaphor, if you will. That same psychologist who talked about the fact that traumatic experiences rewire our brain, physically rewire our brain. I want to talk about what to do with that fear. Because our brain also will force us to not go to the gym, to not work out, to not eat healthy, because it wants us to not be in a state of stress, right? And the idea is that sometimes some stress, certain levels of healthy stress is necessary for our body to live longer, right? And so that's kind of what we're talking about. Now, you've heard me talk about kind of this metaphor of not letting somebody else drive the car of your life, right? Because, picture it this way. Your life is like a road, and a road is always unpredictable. My dad used to say that today you're king, tomorrow you're nothing on the road. So never assume that you're a good driver and you're invincible or whatever. Never assume that you're unstoppable. And it's very similar in life. There are curves just like on the road. There are bumps. There are sinkholes. There are all kinds of different experiences. Sometimes you can see them coming. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes they happen abruptly and you just have to deal with it, right? I also think about kind of you as the car on that road. And the driver is the brain of the body, right? So it's basically that person who makes decisions and looks for signs and things like that. So think about it this way for a second. The idea is that we're all given a different car, if you will. We're given a different childhood, right? Some have had very difficult childhoods, so their car, as a metaphor, is beat up junker. Some have this brand new luxury, right, that they've got in the first 18, 20 years of their life. Some, it's a mix. And the idea is that whatever you've got, take good care of it, right? Because your car's safety, your car's technical state, good tires, good tread on a tire, maintained engine, well-maintained and oiled operation is critical because it doesn't just affect you. It affects other drivers, so to speak, on the road. It affects other people. So if you don't take care of your body, if you just ignore it, if you neglect it, it will not just affect you. You might get sick or you might whatever. And sometimes it doesn't depend on what you do, and so we just have to deal with it. But taking good care of ourselves is important. It also affects our business, right? And on the road, the tech state of our car affects other drivers, because if a wheel falls off our car, we can crash and hurt somebody else in the next car over. Understand? So the idea is to understand how to navigate the curves, how to navigate the unexpected things on the road, what to do and how to relate to what's happening, and how to pay attention to the road always. But an important part of this, that's where fear becomes important, is to pay attention to your intuition, to not try to explain certain things logically, because not everything can be explained logically. And sometimes when you feel real fear, sometimes it's a good sign of running away or doing something. Sometimes it's a trap. So you have to kind of understand what it is for you and how you feel in these different situations. And the idea is to never get rid of the fear, because it's impossible. Fear is an important part of our life. The idea is to not let it drive your car. The idea is to never let go of the steering. When I was younger, when I just started driving, it was 18 in where I grew up. So my dad was actually really cool because he would let me drive his car. And so I would pick him up at work. And he had a business. And I would drive the car and he would sit near me. And so this one time, I saw how my dad, like I would pay attention to how my dad drives. And I noticed that, he was avoiding potholes and stuff like that on the road to preserve brakes and tires and tread on the tires and things like that, so that he doesn't have to change them as often, right? So taking good care of and maintaining the car. And I remember, so I was driving, it was a familiar street, and we were going home. And I was driving, and I noticed this pothole that like spread across the two lanes, right? Two lanes, one lane each way. And I saw this ditch or trench that had like a deep, fairly deep patch up. So in a moment I got scared. I was like, I let go of the steering and I covered my eyes and I hit the brakes. And my dad, caught the steering wheel, held it for a second, and didn't scream at me, which he normally would. He saw that I was already scared of kind of messing up the car. And he said to me, never ever let go of the steering wheel. Never ever allow somebody else to drive your car. I mean, he taught me other things about the car, how you're supposed to hit the brakes before you hit the ditch, but then let it go so that not to damage your brake pads or brake discs or whatever those things are called, right? But he wasn't just talking about driving a car, right? He was also talking about life. Never ever let somebody else drive the car of your life on the road. Never ever let go of the steering. That's where you, as a proverbial misfit, somebody whose path has been different in whatever way, can actually build the life that you want and deserve. Remember, never ever let go of the steering. And I'll talk to you soon.